Howdy folks, it's CowTipper Vern again. This time I'm going to talk about something I mentioned in the last episode. I'm going to pay that off. I'm going to talk about the silent treatment. I call it the silent treatment when somebody leaves meetings and everyone they grew up with, including their friends and family and people they were close to, just ignore them and never ask why, never talk about it, never want to talk about it, show no curiosity at all at best, and completely excommunicate them at worst. When I was leaving meetings, I listened to a lot of deconstruction podcasts and deconstruction stories of people who'd left other faiths as well, like the LDS faith or the Jehovah's Witnesses or different types of cults. And I realized the silent treatment was common to all of the religions. And it surprises everyone every time. It's fascinating. When people grow up in a religion, they spend their entire life in it. It's the most important thing they do. It's the commonality in their family. It's the only credibility they have in some cases. It's the main focus of their life. It's the main focus of their family. It's the main focus of their community. Every single thing in their life centers around their faith. So it would make sense that if their faith changes, the people who are in the faith with them might want to know what's going on. They might want to check in on them. They might want to ask about it. There'd be some natural curiosity. Hey, we're doing this together. We've all done this together forever. It's the most important thing in all of our lives, and now you're not doing it anymore? How come? And yet, that doesn't happen. Nobody asks. People who leave the 2x2s often write exit letters, and they'll explain in as gentle and kind of terms as possible why they're leaving, why their faith has changed, and try to gently say that they don't think differently of anybody else. They just don't have the same faith anymore. And the vast majority of the time, those letters are ignored. Now that I'm an admin of an ex-2x2 support group online, that's a common refrain there too. People who leave are always surprised how little they hear from people around them. When they leave meetings, they expect their family to ask about it, or they expect the workers to care at all, maybe even drop in on them, which happens sometimes, but never to discuss, never to actually have a discussion about what led to the person leaving meetings. I wanted to delve into that a little bit because it's such a common thing. It's nearly universal in the 2x2s to leave and have your experience completely ignored. I know that when I was younger, I ignored people too when they left. I'm not proud of that, but I know that I did it. And so I wonder why. So I decided I wanted to think about that a little bit and maybe talk about it. To think that the most important thing in my life was professing. And yet when somebody I know stopped professing, I just didn't ask. I didn't talk about it. I didn't want to know what was going on. I just kind of ignored them, kind of let them go off and do their thing. There was no animosity. I just watched them go and figured I'd catch up with them later, I guess. And now the same thing has happened to me. I left, and I don't think anyone has actually asked me why I left. I didn't write an exit letter either because I was prepped for it. I knew that nobody cared. I knew that nobody wanted to hear about it. Maybe they care, but there's some fear around it. It's natural to think that when you go through a huge crisis in your life, the people closest to you will lend a sympathetic ear. But that is not the case for faith crises. That never happens. It's very, very rare. Usually when you go through a faith crisis, you go through it on your own or with a few close people around you. That was the case for me and my wife. There are a lot of reasons that we're given the silent treatment when we leave. There's reasons I've done it to other people. There's reasons that it's been done to me, I'm sure. There's a reason nobody reads those exit letters, or if they do, they don't respond to them. And that's what I'm going to talk about today, the silent treatment. The phenomenon of going through a faith crisis and having it met with complete silence, ignored by the people that you thought would care, ignored by the people that you thought it would matter to. I think it does matter to them, but I think there's reasons that they don't talk about it, and they don't want to engage. They don't want to hear about your story. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. The first thing I thought of when I started thinking about the silent treatment is how confusing it is for people inside the 2x2s to watch it. When people leave meetings or leave their belief system, usually it's because there's something that they're going toward. They want something better for themselves. Leaving meetings is a very individual process. It's pretty rare, up until the last couple of years post-Brewergate, it's pretty rare that people leave in groups. Most people that leave meetings leave by themselves. And it's dark and lonely, and it's a terrible time. but it's something they feel like they have to do for themselves. It rarely feels like a choice even. It just feels like they're embodying what they believe now, and that involves leaving. 2x2s do not understand individuality. Individuals don't exist inside the truth. Each professing person is a member of a system. They're a member of the way. Secondarily, if they're lucky, they're a member of a professing family. And their individuality falls way behind all those things. As the saying goes, joy, Jesus first, others second, yourself last. We're told to die to ourselves daily. We're told to ignore our desires, ignore our human desires, our fleshly desires. Anything that makes us an individual, we're told not to pay attention to. So when somebody leaves, it's seen as the ultimate individual act, and it seems like a betrayal. It seems like an act full of sin and full of self. And a 2x2 doesn't want to interact with that. 2x2s don't see leaving as an individual making a choice which makes their life better. To them, it's obviously worse when you leave. It's obviously worse for you that you've left. In their eyes, there's no justification for leaving. There's no reason to, ever. By definition, if you're leaving the truth. You're leaving God's truth. And that's terrifying to them. They don't want to interact with that at all. The fact that you're going off and doing something means you're going off away from them, so they don't need to talk to it. They'd rather not know why you left. No matter why you left, you're worldly now. And 2x2 culture demands separation from worldly people, from worldly things, from fleshly things. Anything that can be dismissed as worldly demands separation. So they're separate from you, and that includes not asking you why you did it. They don't want to know. They don't want to know why you're evil now. Sometimes I have to remember that the 2x2 system doesn't allow for empathy at all. There can't be any empathy. If something happens to you and they don't approve of it, it means you're wrong in some way. There's no possible interpretation of events that could include them causing an offense to you. If you leave, you've offended them. That's it. You leaving meetings means you've chosen yourself over all else. Being an individual means that you're leaving God in their minds, because to love God is to completely give up every part of yourself every day. We often hear about giving our best to the master. That can lead a lot of people to have struggles with going in the ministry, of course, because to give everything is to go in the ministry. That's why workers struggle as well. When they leave meetings, or even just leave the ministry, they're very much looked down upon. I've heard that over and over and over from talking to ex-workers. They all know how much they're looked down upon and dismissed because it means they're not giving their all anymore. When workers leave their position as worker, it doesn't even matter if they go to meetings anymore. People view them as giving up the sacrifice. The sacrifice is what was important. And no one wants to know why they stopped doing that. If the right thing to do is give up your all and sacrifice everything, anything but doing that means you've departed from your purpose. The 2x2 belief system is predicated on exclusivity and being separate from the world and all that. And there's no version of not taking part with them that they think is justified. We were talking recently about how we didn't even consider ourselves Christian per se because the world is Christian. The world uses the term Christian. So when you leave meetings, it doesn't even matter if you believe in God anymore. It's just not the same. I have a lot of relatives who left meetings when I was younger, who went on to very healthy churches, but we never talked to them because they're worldly now. There's no difference between them joining another church down the street or not believing in God at all. We treated it all the same. It would have helped if we'd have talked to them, but they're worldly. We don't want to do that. 2x2 culture demands separation from the world by definition. I've talked a lot about how they're an exclusive group, and they are. They believe that they're the center of creation. They're the center of the universe. They're God's people. The one who created the universe cares mostly about them and what they do. They're in the one true way. They're the chosen people. They're the light of the world. They're told constantly to keep separate from the world. They tell you to avoid even relationships with people in the world. This varies by family, but many people aren't allowed to have friends at school. And it's generally discouraged to date or marry someone who's from the world, which is anyone outside of meetings. The way is perfect, and the people who adhere to the way are therefore the best people. I've heard workers say that quite literally in gospel meetings, that God's people are the best people. And by God's people, he meant the people in the room at that time. God's people are perfect, so there's no valid reason to leave. Why would you? There's no scenario in their minds where leaving leads to a better outcome. The interesting thing is that when you leave, there's an acknowledgement that a separation has happened, but if the people inside are God's one true people, they're the good guys in all of this, then if you leave meetings, you're actually victimizing them. It doesn't matter if you're leaving because you've been abused. They're in the one true way and you're in the world, so they're the victims of this. If there's a separation, if there's ill feelings around any of this, the people inside are the ones who view themselves as victims. Everyone is an extension of and downstream of God's chosen people. And the people inside are very worried about their reputations as such. So when someone leaves, they feel like they have been harmed. This is why when hundreds of people have come forward with accusations of everything from poor treatment to outright abuse, harassment, assault, the people inside can only process it one way: persecution. It can only be persecution because they're God's one true people. A lot of people have left meetings in the last few years because that's the only thing they can do. It's not that they've changed their belief in God necessarily, although a lot of people have, but a lot of people have had to leave just because they realize this isn't true anymore. This level of abuse can't happen in the one true perfect way. It can't be one true and perfect if that level of abuse is happening, and their conscience won't let them stay. And beliefs aside, I will honor those people who feel that way, who step aside and say, this isn't right. I can't justify my place here just because of my title and my credentials as God's chosen person. I have to honor the fact that some people have been abused, and that's not right. I appreciate anybody inside the 2x2s who is willing to listen to anybody on the outside. Up until now, that hasn't been a common thing, but the scandal of the last few years has shaken faith of enough people to cause them to take a step back and look at this more objectively. By and large, most of those people have left now because they realize that the exclusivity is what's keeping them from talking to the people outside. Giving people the silent treatment when you know that they've been abused feels very wrong to a lot of people, and I appreciate that they're honest enough to feel that way. Giving the silent treatment to people who are leaving has always been common, but giving the silent treatment to people who are leaving, who are also very publicly talking about their abuse, feels very wrong to a lot of people, and I appreciate that. There are a few people in meetings who are willing to talk about this, but most of them have left now because they realize that it doesn't work. Exclusivity does not allow them to interact with the world, quote unquote, but the world increasingly includes more and more people who believe in God, believe maybe very similar to them, but have suffered abuse. I appreciate anybody inside or out who can acknowledge all of this and come to the table and talk about it. But for a very long time, that hasn't been the case. The vast majority of people who've left meetings never heard anything about it from the people who were inside, and it doesn't matter why they left. This all begs the question, why? Why not talk to people? Professing people don't actually talk about being exclusive. They talk about being God's one true chosen people, but they also have a funny little complex about saying they're not good enough. Their testimonies are full of downcast eyes and quivering voices and sadness about all the sin that they've committed or all of their shortcomings, and they've fallen short again this week and they barely made it back to meeting, and hopefully God can have mercy on them and they'll try harder this week and all that. Maybe some tears. So how do you square that with not talking to people who are leaving meetings? So how can I say it's because of exclusivity? How can I say it's because they think highly of themselves when their testimonies are constantly talking down to themselves, talking badly about themselves? I think it's because of fear. I'm no psychologist, but fear is a big driver in the 2x2 community. Professing people are scared of everything. They're constantly afraid of the world. I think 2x2s don't ask because they just don't want to know. There's probably some fear that if somebody's leaving because of a bad experience, that bad experience might be true, and they just don't want to know that. How could it be God's one true way if all that bad things happened? If a bad thing happened in the professing community, why would they want to know that? They don't want to know that. It might mean the way isn't perfect, and that's really hard to deal with. So if somebody leaves for a reason like that, they just don't want to hear it. It's scary to hear. I think there's also a fear of a faith crisis if they find out that somebody left and is actually happy about it. I can relate to that a little bit. I remember when I was young, I had some friends that left, and I was a little worried that they seemed to be enjoying their lives. I even prayed when I was younger that God wouldn't let me lose my perspective, that God's one true way was better than everything else. I believed that when I was younger, and I was really afraid that I wouldn't believe that if I saw too much happiness among the people who'd left. I think there's some fear either way. In truth, it's because if you really believe that God's way is this way, if the 2x2s are God's one true way, then anybody who leaves is evil. You really don't want to know why they're evil. That's terrifying. 2x2s just don't want to talk about it. They don't want to know about this. They don't want to know a lot of stuff. They really don't want hard conversations, which kind of explains why they're in the middle of a scandal right now. A lot of hard conversations have been needed, but haven't been had. Too much of the silent treatment has been handed around to everyone for so long that a lot of victimhood has been ignored. Survivors have been ignored for a very long time. Now they're being heard, and it's very confusing to everybody. Workers are writing letters saying that it's all an exaggeration. Friends are writing letters like that. I've mentioned some before on this podcast. I'm not qualified to psychoanalyze people, but I think fear has a lot to do with this. The same reason they don't talk about important issues inside is the same reason they don't talk about important issues which lead to people leaving. Important issues are very difficult for 2x2s to talk about. A lot of people, once they leave, talk about the fact that they never really talked about their beliefs inside. Because there was a fear of stumbling, there was a fear of causing someone else to stumble. I had a lot of that. There's a fear of getting too deep in the weeds on beliefs and getting confused and losing your faith. So they just don't talk about faith. Well, when somebody leaves meetings, that is a conversation about faith, by definition. I was a fearful kid. I was probably fearful well into adulthood, afraid of losing salvation, afraid of causing offense to somebody, afraid of losing a revelation that God had given me, afraid to touch anything vaguely worldly because it might pull me away from my faith. Now, you could say that that's not having very much faith if you're constantly worried about having it taken away, but that's how it is in the 2x2s. You're told to fear everything, all the time. Workers love to talk about it. And then they reframe fear as respect, like fear of God is actually a respect of God or whatever, but fear is fear. There's a reason you use that word. Using alternate meanings for the word doesn't mean the word went away. It's still the same word. When I was younger, I was constantly worried about taking the wrong steps toward a selfish outcome. And when I saw people leave, I figured that had to be the ultimate selfishness, to do something they wanted to do, not subdue their own will and do what God wants them to do, what the workers keep preaching, what their families expect of them. My views on that have changed quite a bit, and maybe I'll talk about my own views another time, but I think it's worth thinking about that when you leave meetings and no one asks you, it's because they're afraid of you. They're afraid of you being selfish, and they're afraid of that rubbing off on them. When you leave, you are worldly, and they're really, really afraid of the world. We're taught from a very young age to be terrified of the outer world. We're in the world, but we're not of the world. We do not want to be of the world. We have to be in it. We have to show our light. Don't hide your light under a bushel and all that. But be very afraid of the world. Be afraid what they can do to you. Be afraid of what could take away your treasure in heaven. And by treasure in heaven, they mean going to meetings. People inside do not want to interact with anything that would make them not feel that way. Their faith is demonstrated by their fear that they would lose their faith. Fear leads to a freeze response to a lot of things. I'm sure we've all heard of fight, flight, freeze. And more recently, I've heard of another phase called fawning. So when you view a threat, you either fight it, you run away from it, you freeze in place, or you fawn over it and try to win it over. Professing people don't fight. That's not a thing they do. They might rephrase it and say fight on your knees, fight in prayer, something like that. We are at battle against the world after all, but we battle in prayer. We don't battle, we don't debate, we don't fight. 2x2s don't fight. They do flee. Professing people like to flee. They flee worldly things, flee the lusts of the flesh, flee from the presence of things that could hurt their salvation and hurt their faith, as demonstrated by coming to meeting. So when someone close to them leaves, no part of them wants to interact with that and find out why it happened. Their instinct is to flee from it, flee from the situation, flee from the person, and then freeze. A common narrative among professing people is we never talked about anything important. Anytime something important came up in our lives, anything that really mattered to us, we would freeze and not talk about it. There's also a little bit of fawning over workers, that's for sure. When survivors and victims bravely come forward with their stories and with their experiences, and 2x2s ignore them, but fawn over the workers who have the accusations or fawn over the friends and look to justify the actions and discredit the victims and survivors, that's a fawn reaction too. So maybe not a lot of fight, but they're demonstrating their fear by freezing, fawning, and fleeing any conversation that might be important. So what do we do about this? I don't really know. I don't have a good summary for this one. I'd love to reach out and talk to 2x2s, but as I mentioned in the last episode, I'm not sure how possible that is because I don't think they would agree to the reality required for everyone to have the same understanding and have the conversation mean something. And for the people who are inside, the people who are still inside 2 years after the letter came out about Dean Brewer and thousands of accusations and an FBI investigation and all the news and the mini documentaries and all that, the people who are still in after all that are the most intense. They're the most believing. They're the least self-reflective. They're the most likely to just not want to deal with it at all. And therefore, they're not going to want to talk to anybody who's left. I've experienced this myself. To deconstruct anything I've talked about today is to deconstruct the actual belief system. The belief system is what tells them not to talk to you. Of course, nothing in the belief system is written down, but everything it makes the people think about themselves is how they interact with other people. They're interacting through a professing lens. I would hope that the upheaval that's happened in the last couple of years within meetings would cause some self-reflection, and I think it has, and some of those people have left. The vast majority of the people inside are not interested. I've even seen people who know all about the scandal, who've experienced things and have even talked to us about it, have gone back to inviting people into their homes who are very questionable and in some cases under investigation. They've gone back to all the conventions, speak highly of the workers, and don't want to think critically about any of this stuff. And in doing so, are cutting off people around them, cutting off the people who've left. Eventually, that leads to the silent treatment. It just does. The remaining friends have the most embedded ideas. The longer people stay, the more likely they are to double down and ignore everyone around them. The ones that were willing to negotiate and understand and listen with empathy have had to leave. There isn't a choice. I try not to talk about what people should believe because I think it's a personal thing. Your worship and your beliefs and all that are highly personal. But one of the problems I see with 2x2 belief systems is that professing people believe that inaction is a sign of faith. Not doing anything is faith promoting. It shows that you believe if you don't take action yourself. We've heard this from an overseer. An overseer spoke at convention and said that many people had asked him what he was going to do about this scandal, and he said nothing. He boldly said nothing. He was proud of it. He was just going to let God work. Of course, that's what's been going on for the last 100+ years, and that's why we have a scandal now, but there's no self-reflection of that. Taking action on your own is showing individuality in the minds of a professing person, so to take action of any kind is to show that you're not trusting. And reaching out and showing empathy and engaging people who've left in conversation is an active approach, and they don't want to do that. That's the agency I was talking about in my last episode. Showing agency and demonstrating your freedom and your will to engage other people and show love and empathy in an active way, not just a passive way, that's a sign that you don't have enough faith, according to a 2x2. Professing people believe that inaction is a sign of faith, and they believe that ignorance to anything around them is virtuous. Ignorance of the world. We don't want to see what's happening in the world. We've constantly seen workers frame the scandal as something that's being perpetrated upon them. It's their own suffering, and it's the world. It's just cares of the world. It's just worldly bitterness and strife, and it's just persecution brought on by the world. So why would they engage anybody who's left? It doesn't matter why. It doesn't matter if someone left because they were abused or assaulted or harassed. That doesn't matter. They're not in anymore, so the workers don't want to talk to them. The friends don't want to talk to them. It's virtuous to ignore them because they're worldly. Anyone who left, regardless of reason, is worldly. So it's virtuous to ignore them. I don't want to tell anybody what to believe, but that seems really, really harmful as a belief system. A belief system that tells you not to reach out, not to empathize, not to speak to people you care about, not to engage people, to fear everyone, including people who've been victimized themselves, to fear survivors, but not fear perpetrators, because one has the right credential of professing and the other one doesn't. That's a weird belief system. It's a damaging belief system. And I don't want to tell anybody what to believe, but I think it's worthwhile pointing out that that's not healthy. And maybe even the people inside should reassess that a little bit. But that's why. This is why they're doing it, because they've been taught to. Their thoughts are controlled. The instincts they have to reach out to family and friends who love and care for them is stunted. And their belief system tells them that to demonstrate their faith, they have to have ignorance, they have to ignore the world, and if you're not professing, you are the world. So the right thing to do is give you the silent treatment. I think that's too bad. I don't know what to do about it, but I'm glad I don't have to do that anymore.